Welcome to the Revenge Diary. You ever have one of those moments where everything slows down, like movies slow, time freezes, heads turn, and suddenly you're not the quiet one anymore. You're not the still single one with the dog. You're the one holding the truth. Everyone thought they knew better than you. That moment happened to me one Sunday afternoon in June 2023, in a backyard in Temecula, California, at my cousin's baby shower. But to really understand why it hit the way it did, you have to know what came before. My name is Lillian Harold. I'm 34, I live in San Diego, and yes, I have a dog. A rescue named Milo, who's basically family. I also have a husband and a daughter, but we'll get to that. Before we jump into this story, I'm curious, what time is it where you're watching this? Drop a comment and let me know. I love seeing whether you're starting your morning with us, taking a lunch break, or winding down for the night. And if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got incredible stories like this one every single day. All right, let's dive in. I grew up in Sacramento in what you'd call a tight-knit but toxic extended family. You know the type, everyone's in your business, but no one's really seeing you. They think they know your story better than you do. My dad passed away when I was 21. Heart attack. Sudden. One day he's teaching me how to change a tire in our driveway, the next day he's gone. He was the buffer between me and my mom's side of the family, especially my Aunt Agatha. After he died, I felt like I lost my biggest champion, and without him, family gatherings turned into something I actively dreaded. My mom did her best. She's quiet, sweet, but not confrontational. She'd rather smooth things over than stand up to her older sister, Agatha, and my younger brother, Danny. He's always had my back, but he's younger and he's a guy. They don't scrutinize him the way they do me. They don't ask him why he's not married yet, or when he's going to settle down and give them some babies to spoil. Growing up, I was the artistic one, the bookworm. While my cousins were planning their weddings in high school, I was reading Virginia Woolf and dreaming of working in publishing. I didn't want to go straight from high school to marriage like my cousin Lee did. I moved to LA, started working at a small publishing house, got my master's in English literature, and eventually began editing books full-time from my apartment. The freedom was intoxicating. I had my own place in Silver Lake, a job I loved, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something that was truly mine. But the family, they saw it differently. I've had a few long-term relationships over the years, but none of them worked out. The worst was Matt. We met at a coffee shop in 2018, and I thought he was charming, confident. The kind of guy who always knew which wine to order, who could talk his way out of parking tickets. We were engaged when I was 29. But underneath that charm, he was manipulative, controlling. He'd make these little comments about my friends. Do you really need to see Sarah again this week? Or my work? Maybe you should consider something more stable than freelance editing. The ring felt less like a promise and more like a cage. The breaking point came when he suggested I move back to Sacramento to be closer to family. For our future kids, he said, but what he really meant was for his comfort. His control, calling off that engagement wrecked me. Not because I loved him, I realized I didn't, not really, but because I knew what the family would say, and they didn't disappoint. Oh, poor Lillian, she just can't find a good man. She picks the wrong ones. She's too picky. That's her problem. She'll end up alone with a bunch of rescue animals. They said it like it was a joke, but they meant it. Every holiday, every birthday party, every family gathering became a referendum on my life choices. Agatha would corner me by the dessert table and ask, with that fake concerned voice, "Any prospects, honey? You're not getting any younger." So I stopped sharing. I showed up to holidays, smiled, nodded, and left early. Eventually, I stopped sending holiday cards. It wasn't worth the performance anymore. Then in 2019, everything changed. I was at an author Q&A event in Pasadena. Some mystery writer I'd been editing was doing a reading at Vroman's bookstore. I almost didn't go. I'd had a brutal week, 3 manuscripts due, and I just wanted to stay home with Milo and a bottle of wine. But something made me go. Maybe it was the universe nudging me. Maybe it was just stubbornness. I was standing in the back, half listening to questions about plot twists and red herrings, when this guy next to me whispered, "He's wrong about the historical detail on page 47. He wasn't being a know-it-all. He was just observant. That was Frank. He was a public school history teacher. Smart, grounded, warm, not flashy. Not the type to command attention at a party. Just real. The kind of man who listens when you speak and remembers what you say 3 weeks later. After the event, we went for coffee. Then coffee became dinner. Dinner became long walks around Griffith Observatory, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about teaching 8th graders about the Civil War, about how he'd wanted to be an archaeologist, until he realized he loved working with kids more than dusty artifacts. I told him about editing romance novels and literary fiction, about the strange intimacy of knowing a story inside and out before most people even get to read it. I didn't fall in love right away. I didn't trust it. Not after Matt, not after watching my heart get dissected at every family gathering. But Frank never pushed. He earned his place slowly, steadily, with little things. How he'd walk Milo when I had tight deadlines. How he'd make breakfast just the way I liked it. Scrambled eggs with extra chives, toast crispy but not burnt. How he'd text me pictures of funny things his students wrote on their history tests. We moved in together in mid-2021, right as the world was opening up again after lockdowns. It felt symbolic somehow, like we were both stepping into something new and hopeful. The wedding happened in 2022. Courthouse ceremony, just us and Danny as our witness. Not because we were hiding or ashamed, but because I didn't want the noise. The scrutiny. The performance of pretending Aunt Agatha's opinions mattered to me. My mom and Danny knew, of course. They met Frank. They adored him immediately. Mom because he helped her fix her computer without making her feel stupid. Danny because Frank actually listened to his ideas about starting a food truck. But I asked them not to share it with the extended family. I wasn't ready for them to taint something I had built with such care. I wasn't ready for Agatha's backhanded congratulations or her immediate pivot to asking when we'd have kids. Then, in September 2022, we had our daughter, Luna. God, I wish I could describe what it felt like, holding her for the first time. Her birth was, honestly, one of the few times I've cried with pure joy. I'd spent so long feeling like I had to prove myself worthy of a family, like I was somehow broken or incomplete. And now, here she was, my family, complete and perfect and mine. Frank cried too. This big, gentle man who taught teenagers about the Revolutionary War, sobbing over this tiny person who fit in the crook of his arm. We didn't announce her birth to the extended family. We didn't post on social media. We just lived, quietly, happily. The three of us plus Milo, who appointed himself Luna's personal guardian from day one. So when the baby shower invitation came in the mail in May 2023, from Cousin Lee, who was pregnant with her third, I stared at it for a long time. It was one of those fancy printed invitations, all pink and gold script. You're invited to celebrate baby girl Morrison, with little cartoon storks in the corners. I hadn't been to a family event in almost 2 years. Not since Christmas 2021, when Agatha made some comment about how some people are just meant to be the fun aunt instead of the mom. But this was different. Lee had always been neutral. Not warm exactly, but not cruel either. She'd never joined in on the jokes about my perpetual singleness or my obsession with my dog. Plus, my mom had been asking me to make more of an effort with the family. They miss you, she'd say, though I suspected she was the only one who actually did. Frank found me holding the invitation at the kitchen table, Luna on my lap trying to grab the shiny paper. "You thinking of going?" he asked, settling into the chair next to me with his morning coffee. "I don't know, maybe. It's been so long since I've seen everyone." He raised an eyebrow. "The same everyone who spent years making you feel like shit about your life choices." This is why I love this man. He sees through the politeness to the truth underneath. It's Lee's shower. She's not like the others. But Agatha will be there. It wasn't a question. We both knew she would be. I looked down at Luna, who was now trying to eat the corner of the invitation. At 15 months, she was starting to babble more, trying to mimic words. She had Frank's dark hair and my stubborn streak. "Maybe I'll just go for an hour, show my face, give the gift." Frank reached over and smoothed Luna's hair. "Want backup?" I almost said no. Old habits. But then I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd never made me feel like I needed to be anyone other than who I was. Actually, maybe stay close. Just in case. The shower was exactly what I'd expected. Lee's backyard in Temecula was transformed into a pink paradise. Pastel streamers hung from the patio covering cute table signs that said "Ready to Pop," and Mamos a bar, and enough balloon arrangements to stock a party store. Lee looked radiant in a flowy pink dress that showed off her bump. Her friends, mostly other young moms from her neighborhood, cooed over her registry list and shared birth stories that made my toes curl. I parked myself near the drink station, nursing a sparkling water and chatting with Danny, who'd driven down from Sacramento with Mom. He was telling me about his latest date, some nurse he'd met at a trivia night, when I felt it. That cold prickle on the back of my neck, the one that used to warn me when the school bullies were approaching. The patio door slid open with a soft whoosh, and out came Aunt Agatha. She was dressed like she was hosting the Met Gala instead of attending a backyard baby shower. Wide-brimmed sun hat that probably cost more than my car payment, designer dress in a shade of coral that demanded attention, jewelry that caught the light every time she moved. At 58, Agatha had raised 3 kids, including Lee. But somehow that experience had turned into moral authority over everyone else's reproductive choices. She'd been married 3 times, currently to a real estate developer who spent most of his time on golf courses and most of her time being ignored. She surveyed the party like a queen inspecting her domain, and then her eyes found mine across the lawn. The smile that spread across her face was predatory. "Oh, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," she announced, her voice carrying easily over the chatter of the party. "Still single, Lillian, still treating that little mutt like he's your baby." The conversations around us stuttered to a halt. I felt every eye in the backyard turn toward me. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading for 2 years. The reason I'd stopped coming to these things. I forced a smile, the one I'd perfected over years of family gatherings. "Milo's not a mutt, Aunt Agatha, he's a rescue, and he's doing great, thanks for asking." She laughed, this tinkling, condescending sound that made my skin crawl. "Honey, it's okay to be honest. You're lonely. It happens to women like you." She gestured vaguely in my direction. "That big house in San Diego, that dog sleeping in your bed because there's no man there, nothing but wine and Netflix on Friday nights. It's sad, but it's predictable." A few people actually chuckled. Someone, I think it was Lee's mother-in-law, snorted. I felt my cheeks burn. My mom was sitting in a lawn chair nearby, biting her lip, her hands twisted in her lap. I could see she wanted to say something, but she never would. Not to Agatha. Danny started to stand up, his jaw tight, but I gave him a small shake of my head. I'd learned long ago that letting others fight my battles only made things worse later. "I'm not lonely," I said quietly. "I'm actually really happy with my life." "Sure you are, sweetheart." Agatha's voice dripped with false sympathy. "Look, there's no shame in admitting you picked career over family. Some women just aren't cut out for marriage and motherhood. It's biology. You can't fight nature." The backyard was silent except for the sound of ice melting in glasses and a neighbor's lawn mower in the distance. And then, slide click. The patio door opened again. Frank stepped out onto the patio, and I swear the world stopped spinning. He was wearing his faded San Diego Padres t-shirt, the one with the small hole near the left shoulder that he refused to throw away, and jeans that had seen better days. His dark hair was slightly messed up, like he'd been running his hands through it. But it wasn't Frank who made every conversation in that backyard screech to a halt. It was Luna. She was nestled against his chest, her tiny arms wrapped around his neck, still groggy from her nap. Her favorite stuffed fox, a ratty little thing she'd had since she was 6 months old, dangled from her left hand. Her hair was sticking up in about 12 different directions, and there was a red mark on her cheek from where she'd been sleeping against the car seat. She was perfect. "Sorry I'm late," Frank said, his voice carrying easily across the silent patio. "Someone had a longer nap than expected." He looked directly at me, and I saw the question in his eyes. "You okay?" Luna blinked in the bright sunlight, confused and slightly cranky. She looked around at all the unfamiliar faces staring at her, then focused on the one face she recognized. Her whole face lit up. "Mama," she called out, stretching her arms toward me. The silence that followed was divine. I could hear Aunt Agatha's sharp intake of breath. Could see Lee's mouth fall open. Could feel the shocked stares of 20-something women who thought they knew exactly who I was and what my life looked like. I crossed the patio in 3 steps and took Luna from Frank's arms, breathing in her familiar smell of baby shampoo and the lavender detergent I used on her clothes. "Hey, baby girl," I murmured, kissing her forehead. "Did you have a good nap?" She nodded seriously and showed me her Fox. "Fox sleep too. I see that. Fox looks very well rested." Frank stepped up beside us, his hand settling on the small of my back in that automatic way couples do after years together. "How's the party?" he asked, though his eyes were scanning the crowd, taking in their shocked expressions. "Oh, you know," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Just catching up with family. Aunt Agatha was just telling everyone about my lonely Friday nights with Netflix and wine." Frank's eyebrows rose, and I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "Huh, that's funny. Our Friday nights usually involve Blue Eye reruns and arguing over who's changing the next diaper." Luna giggled at the word, Blue Eye, and started babbling about dogs and dancing, which made absolutely no sense to anyone but us. I turned back toward the group, Luna balanced on my hip, Frank solid and warm beside me. Agatha was still staring, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You," Lee finally found her voice. "You have a baby?" "I do." I smiled, shifting Luna to get a better grip. "This is Luna, she's 15 months old. And married?" This came from someone in the back, one of Lee's friends, I think. 2 years in October. Frank held up his left hand, showing off the simple gold band I'd picked out for him. "Best decision I ever made." The silence stretched on. I could see people trying to recalibrate, trying to fit this new information into the narrative they'd constructed about my life. But Agatha, she was still stuck on loading. "But," she sputtered, "no one said anything, no one mentioned. When did this happen? Why didn't anyone tell me?" I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd spent years making me feel small and broken and less than. This woman who'd convinced herself that her cruelty was somehow justified because she was just telling hard truths. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely sorry for her. I stopped sharing personal news with people who made it clear they weren't interested in celebrating my happiness, I said simply. After years of having my choices criticized and my life dissected, I decided to keep the good stuff for people who actually care about me. Danny was grinning so wide, I thought his face might split. Mom had tears in her eyes, happy tears, I realized. She was proud. Frank squeezed my shoulder. "I'll head back to the car and wait for you too," he said quietly, understanding that I needed a moment to handle this on my own terms. He looked around the group, all still staring at us like we just performed a magic trick. "Sorry to crash the party. Nice to meet you all." He kissed me, not a show-offy kiss, just the comfortable, automatic kiss of two people who'd been together long enough to stop performing their love for other people. "Take your time," he murmured against my ear. "You've got this." And then he headed back toward the parking lot, leaving me with Luna and a backyard full of people who suddenly didn't know what to think about me. Luna, bless her heart, chose that moment to decide she was hungry. "Mama, snacks?" she asked, tugging on my shirt. "Of course, baby. Let's see what they have." I walked over to the food table, past Agatha, who was still standing frozen by the patio door, and found some cut-up strawberries. Luna immediately grabbed one with her chubby little fingers and shoved half of it in her mouth. "She's beautiful," Lee said quietly, appearing at my elbow. I had no idea." I looked at my cousin, really looked at her. She seemed genuine. Hurt maybe, but not malicious. "Thank you," I said. "And congratulations on baby number 3. How are you feeling?" We chatted for a few minutes about pregnancy symptoms and the challenges of keeping up with 2 toddlers while growing a 3rd human. It was normal. The kind of conversation I'd imagined having with family, before years of judgment and criticism had made me build walls. But I could feel the weight of other conversations happening around us. The whispered questions, the recalibrated assumptions. And in the center of it all, Aunt Agatha, still looking like someone had just explained quantum physics to her in ancient Greek. Finally, she approached us. "Lillian," she said, and her voice was different now. Smaller somehow. I owe you an apology." I shifted Luna to my other hip and waited. I thought I was helping, being honest about your situation. But clearly I was wrong about." She gestured vaguely toward Luna, toward me, toward the entire reality she'd failed to see. "You weren't wrong about my situation," I said evenly. "You were wrong about thinking you knew what it was." She nodded, looking genuinely chastened for the first time in my memory. Would you maybe want to have lunch sometime? I'd like to meet your husband properly. And spend time with Luna. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd made me dread family gatherings for years. This woman who'd convinced herself that cruelty was wisdom, that judgment was love. Maybe, I said finally. But things would have to be different. The comments, the assumptions, the judgment, that all stops. She nodded quickly. Of course, yes, absolutely. I didn't believe her, not entirely. People don't change overnight, especially not people who have spent years perfecting their particular brand of toxicity. But for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt like I was talking to her from a position of strength rather than defense. Luna finished her strawberry and decided she was done being social. She pressed her face into my neck and mumbled something about wanting to go home. I think that's our cue, I said to Lee. Thank you for inviting me. And seriously, congratulations. I hugged my cousin, collected Mom and Danny, and headed for the parking lot. As we walked to our cars, Danny threw his arm around my shoulders. That, he said, was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The look on Agatha's face when Luna called you Mama, I wish I'd gotten a picture. Mom squeezed my other hand. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. We drove home to San Diego with Luna babbling in her car seat, pointing out dogs and trucks and airplanes through the window. Frank had already started dinner, his famous Sunday pasta with homemade sauce that takes 4 hours but is absolutely worth the wait. Milo greeted us at the door like we'd been gone for years instead of hours, his tail threatening to knock over the lamp in his enthusiasm. This is my life. Not the life Aunt Agatha thought I should want, not the life she thought I was too broken to have, but the life I actually built. Quietly, carefully, with a man who sees me completely, and a daughter who thinks I hung the moon, and a dog who's been my faithful companion through all of it. That night, after Luna was asleep and Frank was grading papers at the kitchen table, I sat on our back patio with a glass of wine and called Danny. So, he said as soon as he picked up, how does it feel to be the family legend? I laughed. Is that what I am now? Are you kidding? Mom's already called 3 people to tell them about your dramatic reveal. She's treating it like you planned the whole thing. I kind of did, in a way. I planned to live my life authentically, even if that meant living it quietly. Well, the secret's out now. Think you'll start coming to more family stuff. I watched Milo chase a lizard around our small garden, thought about Luna sleeping peacefully in her crib, listened to Frank humming off-key in the kitchen. Maybe, I said, but on my terms this time. Some families think they can define you. They think they know better than you do what your life should look like, what choices you should make, what happiness you deserve. But eventually, if you're patient enough and strong enough and lucky enough, the truth shows up. Sometimes it arrives in your own arms, carried by the life they swore you'd never have. And when it does, the silence is absolutely golden. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to share this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more incredible revenge stories coming your way. Now I'm curious, have you ever had a moment where you proved family wrong about your life? Or maybe you've been the one who had to eat their words. Drop a comment below and tell me about your own silence is golden moment. I go through every single comment, and I love hearing your stories.